Alright then, hello again everyone. Time to delve into some more Wuthering waves. With the advent of this new 2.6 patch, we have also gotten a brand new, meaty main story quest to delve into, starring the new character Augusta, which I did a video pulling her just a few days ago. You should check that one out. And I figured I'd make a little video going through the story this time, since I've really enjoyed what Rinasida has provided for us so far story-wise. Now, I'm no expert on the lore or really the story in general. There's a bunch of other channels to go to if that's your cup of tea, but I'm not entirely out of the loop. There are often confusing phrases and convoluted abilities and phenomena that appear a lot in this game, at least for me, especially that last story quest. People called it a godsend in writing, while I honestly just found it to be quite alright. Frollo was a great character, she had a great backstory and all that, but good God, did I not have a clue what was going on half the time. Maybe that's just me though. It seems people loved that one a lot. All that aside though, I was really excited for this one going in, since we'd finally get some interactions with Augusta and Yuno, and boy did it not disappoint. Going forward, I'm gonna try my best to break it down for you. However, I do recommend going out and playing this for yourself, since this game has what I'd say is one of the better storylines in gacha games as a whole. Anyways, here we go, Chapter 2, Act 8, by Sun's Burning Hand. So, our story starts off with Rover and Abby just chilling somewhere in Septimont. Oh yeah, Abby, by the way, is like the Paimon of this game, I guess, though not nearly as annoying. And just like Paimon, we have no idea what the hell he is. Anyways, they're chilling, and this guy comes up to us with a letter summoning us to the F4, Augusta's palace, and it's regarding the hunt. The hunt being when the gladiators of Septimont gather at an island on the outskirts of Septimont called Penguin's Plateaus, where the dark tide gathers and gladiators fight it to repel it and its various monsters. When we get to the palace, we are greeted by some intense aura farming, like Jesus, this shot right here. Wang Ji might finally have an opponent. As Rover is unlocked, she throws her gigantic expand dong type blade right towards us UBW Archer style, and they clash for just a moment. However, this is 2.6 and not 1.0, so Rover easily deflects that, and we finally get properly introduced to her in person, and by the way, her voice.
Simple and efficient. No need for pleasantries. Here we let our blades do the talking. The Septimont way.
Strongly approve. We learn about the hunt and what awaits us there, and this time it seems the dark tide is going to be more disastrous than ever, and yeah, they weren't lying. Abby takes a shit or something, and then we head towards the plateaus, only to get interrupted in our leisurely stroll by this 4-star character looking guy, Avidius. He seems nice enough and surely doesn't have any ulterior motives. We follow him as he takes us to Augusta, and there we see the plateaus in their full glory, and commence cutscene. Oh yeah, that thing. It's called a Corrosaurus, some type of super strong Tacit Discord that's got a pretty strong connection to the Dark Tide. And as soon as we start battling it, it is drawn away by the other character we've all been waiting for, Yuno, who for some reason gets a lot of shots in this quest focused right on her feet. Kuro Games, you know what you did here. As we arrive at the Gladiators camp, Augusta discusses various aspects about the Dark Tide, how it's connected to Leviathan, and that the place the gladiators go to fight against it is Earthrend Wedge, which is where we have to go to tackle it ourselves. Before doing so, however, we visit Yuno's temple where, ding ding, time for some exposition. Murals with a prophecy foretelling how a legendary figure known as the Hero of Heroes will rise from the Dark Tide itself and bring peace to Septimont. Basically, quite typical prophecy stuff, you know. I wonder who the Hero of Heroes can be. At this point, I think we've had maybe 4 or 5 prophecies just like this throughout the whole story, and Rover always ends up being the one mentioned in the midst. Will it happen again? Probably. It can get a bit predictable at times. Avidius bothers us again, and Yuno tells us that, oh no, he probably does have ulterior motives, looking to claim the title of Hero of Heroes himself by joining in this hunt and maybe even usurping the title of F4 from Augusta. Who could have seen that coming? Though he does tell us that Augusta most likely isn't as strong as she's made out to be, being skilled with the blade but otherwise having quite weak powers, which is interesting stuff. The Pride Wind tier list, however, would beg to differ. Before running off to the hunt, an old lady tells us there is a sort of void in Rover's fate. I'm sure that'll be explained later. And also Yuno has another questionable camera angle before deciding to do some light aura farming.
Jeez.
And then we get to go hunting. We get an anchor stone from Augusta, which helps us repel the dark tide ever so slightly and lure that Corrosaurus thing to the lower levels of the plateaus. We fight off a bunch of tacit discords with Frolova, because I can do that. Insert the anchor stone into one of those obelisks, as they call them, and then boom, Augusta has voices in her head. Great. Before we can even begin to discuss them though, the Corrosaurus attacks and is driven away by Augusta. Yuno arrives, and together with Avidius we chase after them both, going through these caves and ruins, trying to avoid the monster's claws. We start getting some actual gameplay, as so far it's been quite cutscene heavy, which is pretty common for a story quest in a gacha game like this, and it's pretty alright. Getting to play as a fully leveled Augusta is actually pretty fun, and makes me even more excited to actually build her and try her out in the tower and our Whimpering Wastes. We keep pursuing the Corrosaurus, referred to as Tyrannos in this quest, and we reach the Asphodel Barrens, which... no, we're not doing that. Augusta finally confronts Avidius here, telling him she can see his desire for power, but he's basically nowhere near her level, and instead just to stand by her side instead of challenging her. Tyrannos, however, interrupts us yet again, and we finally get to fight this damn thing until cutscene.
Is in place.
The cutscenes in this game have always been pretty damn impressive, and this is just one small example of that. Anyways, we follow the now hornless Tyrannos, only to see the forbidden dark tide goop swallow it whole, and almost taking Yuno down with it as well. She sees in this sudden underworld-like realm a vision of Augusta's death and the end of Septimont, but is saved by Rover before she can fully succumb to it. And also this big Tempest Mephist thing crawls out of the goop. Might be important. After saving her, we see Augusta is being beckoned by these whispers in her head to accept their gift of divinity upon seeing the immense power Rover actually holds. Yuno is pretty beat up after this event, as we talked to her about the visions she saw. She talks about her powers, which, for context, as a priestess, they can basically see visions of the future, and how helpless it makes her feel, as there is nothing to be done to change the fates she witnesses. But with this comes another damning revelation: she can no longer see the future, as she gave that ability up in exchange for a different one, which allows her to repel the dark tide. Okay, there's a lot of exposition here. You still with me? We also learn about what that thing that came out of the Forbidden Goop really is. It is called the False Sovereign, which is a really cool title for a boss, I'm not gonna lie, and it's basically an embodiment of the dark tide itself. Basically, we gotta beat that thing up. One more thing before this exposition dump ends. The power that lets Yuno repel the dark tide comes with a price: her existence itself. Every time she uses it, it shaves a tiny bit of her existence away. Are they planning on pulling a rem on her? Is that what we're doing here? We get her bracelet, and which, by the way, this is like the 500th gift Rover has received so far during the course of the story, and after talking to Avidius about his personal encounters with the dark tide, having faced it and lost all his companions to it, basically, so that's his backstory. We keep going. At this point in the story, though, we're about halfway in, maybe a bit more, and Avidius' role is already sort of diminishing. I think they had planned him to do some sort of betrayal, but I honestly don't see that happening now. We gain a connection with the Black Shores to collect data on the dark tide frequencies, and with Booling's help, we find out the Sovereign is located in a lower level town called Murmmer's Town, which just so happens to be Augusta's hometown. Rover and Augusta, along with Avidius and his crew of gladiators, all agree to venture down there and take out the threat. We arrive, and this area honestly looks incredible. I think this is the most ravaged any civilization has been so far in this game. There's a lot of ruins and destroyed towns all over the world, but this one certainly takes the cake. 2.0 has had nothing but incredibly designed regions. We find out the frequencies are kind of messed up here, and the only way to properly track the Sovereign down is to find a pure dark tide frequency, as they call it. Alright, sure, whatever that means, man. We blackmail Abby before heading out to find this pure frequency. Meanwhile, the whispers in Augusta's head beckon her even more to basically let go of her will and accept their power. I mean, it's pretty obvious this is just the Threnodian Leviathan messing about again, and that's all the 2.0 story quests have been, essentially. She rejects it, and we find this statue that basically turns the entire town into the same town it was 16 years ago. Time travel, ladies and gentlemen, kind of. It's more like just a vision of the past. In this Sonora we see phantoms of Augusta as a child, alongside her friend called Angel, and we see conversations they had as they both aspire to be the hero of heroes, strong gladiators, yada yada. It's pretty neat stuff, some more characterization for her, though the real kicker we find out here is how the town was ravaged by the Dark Tide and how it got basically no aid at all from Septimont. Augusta curses the senators ruling Septimont, calling them complacent in the disaster and lamenting how they didn't even try to help. Another reason why she decided to challenge them and later rise to become the F4 herself. Back to the young Augusta we saw and her friend. During the Dark Tide disaster they ran to this big oak tree called Oak Hollow and attempted to fend off the monster before them, but it only targeted Angel and not her, and it was then the Dark Whispers began haunting her. After this, she grew stronger and became the F4 and is still challenging the Senate, who all secretly want her to perish as a consequence of these so-called prophecies. Augusta tells Rover that the people of Septimont still cling to the hope of a hero of heroes and that she basically has to take that role for them. Should there be any doubts, the real hero of heroes can step forward and challenge her. Again, who could it be? Also, Angel apparently defeated the Dark Tide, but as a consequence grew to be something abnormally powerful, and we'll probably see that in another patch. Anyways, we get the pure Dark Tide frequency and Avidius side plot. Hello? Yeah, so Avidius gets a little solo story here. His crew of gladiators doubt him, wanting him to triumph here so he can take the spot of Septimont's next ruler, but in a surprising turn of events, everything I thought about him kind of goes away here. He doesn't seem to be actually looking for that, instead he is here genuinely as it is his duty as a powerful gladiator, even cursing this dude out for even suggesting it. The guy collapses due to the Dark Tide's effects on him, and in order to heal him from it, he runs off to find a plant that supposedly helps against it. He gets stuck in a hole doing so and mutters something about it being an illusion by the Dark Tide, maybe a trap. Before we can think about that though, we cut back to Rover and Augusta. And finally, the Sovereign shows himself. I can't tell you how excited I was here. Finally, some juicy boss fighting. I felt like Saitama finally getting to fight a powerful opponent, and then another cutscene. Oh shit. Yeah, so that went well. The goop is now everywhere, do not quote me on that. The Dark Tide is everywhere, cutting off all communications and just messing everything up. But there is hope, of course. We can reach the Sovereign by feeding it some rocks and also having Yuno stabilize the entire Dark Tide. Remember that side effect she told us about, by the way? Yeah, so they're definitely pulling a Rem here. Obligatory Yuno feed shot again, by the way. Like, seriously, Kuro? On the way to the Sovereign, we fight a bunch of Tacit Discords, and I enjoy it always since I get to play more Augusta, and finally, Yuno pulls the legendary Archer move. And everything is stable, but huh? What? Suddenly, Augusta turns on us and declares she's gonna use the Dark Tide's power after all against us. At least that's what I think she does, that's how I interpreted that scene. Alright, she did say earlier, if her ability is to be doubted, the true hero of heroes shall rise to challenge her. So yeah, actual Augusta boss fight. Holy shit. This is all done in order to mark Rover as the hero of heroes to fulfill the temple's prophecy. I kinda expected this still, but it was a pleasure to see anyways. She confronts the Dark Tide and I guess, or maybe I should say Leviathan now. And then this animated cutscene of her being stripped of everything and then breaking free of her chains to Leviathan.
This is how I will show you with my own face!
And boom, we finally get to beat the shit out of the false Sovereign, and this boss kind of kicked my ass, I'm not gonna lie. I hope they'll make this a hologram boss soon so I can actually learn his patterns properly and get like a rewarding fight out of it. Then Augusta straight up pulls a Kingdom Hearts move, summoning a bunch of deceased gladiator spirits into her sword and... pure cinema. The battle ends and Rover and Augusta stand victorious, discussing how, in reality, it seems they both actually fit the title of Hero of Heroes. Good on you both, just another title for Rover to add to her collection. Our journey ends, and what is left behind is a relic of the Sentinel this time, Imperator. Because Imperator is connected to Leviathan and all that jazz. I'm not going to get into it. If you want more context on that, look up a summary of the 2.2 story instead. It's way too much to discuss here. This relic is a thing called a discoid. And to uncover what it holds, apparently we need help from Carithia. Jesus, when will Jinchi get this much screen time? Like, I swear Carithia has been a part of every patch since her introduction. Before we end off though, Cristoforo is here and mumbles about something again like he always does, like enough already, and oh baby, she has arrived. Yes, see you in 2.7 bro. So yeah, that was the new 2.6 story quest, chapter 2, act 8. I hope you stayed with me all the way to the end. Breaking it down in a full summary like this was actually pretty fun, and was a nice way to really digest everything going on here. All things considered, this was a really fun quest and a surprisingly simple and straightforward story to follow, at least for Wuthering Waves standards. There have been a few patches where I've genuinely had no idea what's going on half the time, specifically 2.2 and 2.5 for me, so this was a nice surprise. I love the characters this time, and the Sovereign is probably one of my favorite bosses in the game thus far, just behind maybe Fallacy of No Return and maybe Hecate. If you enjoy this type of video for the story quest, definitely subscribe and like the video, as I'm looking forward to doing the same for the upcoming quest in the latter half of this patch, one which seems to focus on Yuno. I'm probably going to try to get her S2 or S3 honestly. This did follow a lot of conventions and tropes the game has kind of done to death so far, with Prophecies and Rover being kind of the legendary savior through it all, yada yada. And I'm kind of sad that that little Avidius side plot basically went nowhere. Or, well, maybe it will later, who knows. Those are kind of my thoughts on the quest as a whole, so I'd like to know what you think about it. Leave some comments down below and let me know your thoughts on this new patch just in general. Moving forward, I'm going to enjoy the rest of what this patch has to offer and absolutely make more videos on these new events. That tower defense one looks pretty interesting. As for this quest, what would I rate it? It's not really like... It's certainly in the upper tier of the story so far, though it's not as good as something like 1.1 or 2.0. I did like 1.3 as well. I'd say maybe a high B tier, yeah. Alright, well, thanks for watching. See you all next time.